Right, good morning folks from Pipers'Persuasion. It's the 12th of, what is it, March? 2018. We're getting to the stage now, it's the years it is a wee bit of a problem, isn't it? Okay, we're out in Christen, which is northeast of Glasgow.
Yes.
Aye. And the home of Alec Connell. Alec, very famous drummer in his day with mainly the City of Glasgow Police, then Strathclyde Police, but as we'll hear, other famous bands even before that. And we look forward to hearing about his various exploits in drumming and expertise and his views on MSR's 6/8s and particular ensemble, which was a new thing to us all in the late 60s. Anyway, besides all that, what inspired me to come out here eventually, I've been wanting to do this to see Alec for years, is I received an email from a chap in San Diego, Stephen Rutledge. Do you know him?
I've got his email address up
there you are. Anyway, he was adamant to speak to Alec Connell, so here we are. And he sent me a wee list of questions to ask you and all the rest. So we'll maybe delve into that. So, Alec, I spoke to various members of the 214 BB, and I understand that's where you started off your drumming. And how did all that come about? I spoke to, for instance, Joe Noble, and says it was a mistake, he should have been a piper and all this sort of stuff. But how did you come to drumming?
Well, to tell you the truth, I was at school and one of my classmates came up to my door one night and asked me did I want to go and join the Boys Brigade, which I eventually didn't. To cut a long story short, the following Tuesday he came up and he had a pair of drumsticks in his hand and he says, do you fancy coming along to join the band? Which I did.
What age were you?
I was 13. I was about a year late, and because of my years down in Millport during the war, by the time I come up, I was a year behind and was put back a class. But eventually...
You caught up?
Yes. And joined the Boys Brigade, and the drumming instructor was Willie Patterson.
I remember Willie.
Who was the leading drummer of the famous Rutherglen pipe band that Alec McIver played in.
Yes.
And he took me under his wing, and when I was 15, he took me away to the Clanmacrae Society pipe band.
I was just going to say that.
That was my first grade 1 band.
He went to Clanmacrae.
Yes. Willie Patterson was the leading drummer, and we had several others. A famous wee tenor drummer was Charlie McIntosh. But I spent 3 seasons with the Clanmacrae, and then Willie fell out with the secretary and took me away and made me the leading drummer of Renfrew.
The Renfrew pipe band. And you were saying there off camera, that was Donald Murray at that time.
Donald Murray in Renfrew. And we were very successful, and we won the European Drum Corps Championship in Belfast. That was with Stirling McMurtry and wee Bob
Was
Laverty.
that in 1962?
Could have been. No.
Was that the 57
one? The 50s, the 50s,
The 57 one, aye. I spoke to Andrew Wright, who was with the Hackle at that time, and him and I were getting mixed up because the Hackle apparently had flown out in 57, but we got the boat in 62, and the two is what a kind of conversation we had, you know.
What a good decision that was, because Stirling and I were sick on the deck going across the...
So you actually went in the Brumelaw boat?
We went in the Brumelaw boat, and by heavens, that was some journey. I was as sick as a dog. I'd never been seasick in my life until that point.
Was that in the road out?
Yes.
Aye.
It was stormy.
So it wasn't a drink then?
Oh no. We were too young to drink these days.
What age would you be at that time?
Let me see now. 15, 18.
Aye.
18,
Uh-huh.
18 at the youngest.
Uh-huh.
Maybe 19.
Okay. Uh-huh.
And because I remember we played in the McRae for 3 seasons and we won the World's Drum Corps Championships on each of these 3 seasons
Uh-huh.
under Willie Patterson.
Aye.
With a smashing drum corps.
Aye.
And so if I was there 3 seasons, it must have been 3 years. So I was 15 when I went.
Aye.
And when I went into Renfrew, I must have been at least 18.
Okay. So it's a broad sketch of, you know, the BBE and these 2 bands, the Clan McRae and the Renfrew. But dragging you back to the beginning again, who was in the 214 BB with you? Alec McIver in charge and all that sort of stuff.
Bobby Laverty, who was with me in the Renfrew eventually.
Uh-huh.
He was in the BB at that time.
Right. Sterling McMurtry there.
Sterling was there.
Uh-huh.
Sterling was my flank drummer.
Uh-huh.
But to begin with, there was only the 2 of us.
Uh-huh.
We had 6 pipers and 2 snare drummers and a big chap called Malcolm Irvin who was the bass drummer and died fairly youngish
Uh-huh.
in years.
Yeah.
But that was the initial drum corps.
Okay.
Just a bass and 2 sides. And then of course you had Joe Noble and George Hunter and a young lad called David McRoberts.
Okay.
They all came after Sterling and I.
And had you left by that time?
I left when I was 15
Aye, you left
because
at 15.
Willie was taking me to the
Away
McRae.
to Clan McRae.
Yeah.
So you'd about 2-3 years at most
Yes,
in the BB.
That's
and,
all,
And left
yes.
Sharp. Ian McClellan, where was he?
Ian was still on the horizon at that time. Now, he must have been there. Of course, there's a lot of the pipers were there getting tuition without me knowing anything about
Of course,
them. You know.
aye, absolutely.
Alec
Especially
Ibell,
at that age. Aye.
Joe King, Alec Ibell.
Aye.
Alec was the one that took them,
Mhm.
beginners, and the guy that took over his job when he died was Dan Finlay,
Ah,
John's
yes.
cousin.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
He took the beginners
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
and stuff
Aye.
like that. They had some organisation in the
Aye.
background there, you know.
Now, Stephen Routledge, we spoke about him a second ago. And fun enough, his second question, and he must know more about drumming. I know absolutely nothing about drumming, of course. And he said to ask you about the origins of your matched grip stick position and how much grief you were given for keeping that.
Yes, I was given some grief.
So, what is it? What is this
plain
matched stick, grip stick position? Explain that, would you?
Well, that's holding, instead of holding the stick in the left hand through the thumb and the fingers curling up like that, and using that kind of motion as opposed to the up and down
So
motion.
the open,
hammer
the
grip.
left hand would be open almost, and,
Yes.
and the right hand closed, and the opposite facing down the way.
That was it.
But you had your both hands facing down the
Eventually,
way.
to begin with,
Aye.
I was the orthodox method,
Okay.
i.e. the Battle of Waterloo, when the drummer took the regiment into battle, the drum was tilted to the side, and therefore you couldn't hold a stick in the left hand that way. It was only when the modern thing came to being that you could place the drum in front of you in a flat surface, like a table even.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the reason I did
So
the match grip. The reason was I began to feel that there was a weakness in my left hand as far as playing the drum roll was concerned.
Okay.
And I sort of took it upon myself, having watched some dance band drummers playing that way.
Yeah.
And it seemed to me you would get a more even rolling bit
Action.
going, you know, rolling action, yeah. And eventually took it, and lo and behold, two of the other boys, Willie Cortondale and Ian Kennedy and Roddy Darragh, all adopted that. Sterling was the only one that didn't adopt that method. Not because he didn't want it, but I think he didn't have enough confidence to do it.
Aye, just to
but the rest of
change.
us all did. And it amazed me when I look back on it,
Aye.
how successful we were. We didn't win a great deal of drumming championships, but the corps played well together.
Aye, aye. So, there was mention of it, what grief you got. There was other drummers commenting on it.
I don't remember anything in particular that was particularly nasty. Or,
No, but it was
it
was a
Alec
curiosity more than anything else. Maybe.
Alec Duthert was asked,
Aye.
what about this match script? And he says, listen, he said, because one of the drumming judges commented on the way I was holding my stick and deducted points from me because I was... And Alec Duthert was questioned about it, and he says, listen, he says, you can play with the sticks under your oxters as long as you're producing the sound.
The sound.
And I thought that was a brilliant answer, you know. And good old Alec, he was always an ally of mine.
Aye.
And him and I always got on well. And that was it.
Aye.
No more points deducted. He was an Edinburgh policeman, by the way, that did the deduction.
Who was
a fella
that?
called Ferguson.
Aye. Oh, I
You remember him?
Ferguson. Aye.
He was
Aye.
I think he was a sergeant in the police, I'm not sure.
All
But he
these
was
folk for Edinburgh didn't like the Glasgow police.
Well, funnily enough, I got on tremendously well with a lot of the Edinburgh boys, Harry McNulty and Ian McLeod and them all.
Aye.
And it never
But
struck
when it
me...
came to judging, they were sore on you.
Oh, yes. And of course, Bob Montgomery, the leading drummer of the Edinburgh
aye,
Police,
Edmund.
he was a lovely guy.
Okay.
He helped me when I was learning how to score to write the score properly.
Aye.
And,
Were you taught that in the BB at all, or did you have to pick that up elsewhere,
What?
writing music?
we were taught it from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But as you can understand, when you're playing in a pipe band, you don't have a music stand in front of you, so you don't use it that much. You memorise everything.
Aye, aye.
And that's what took place.
Yes.
But it was only through me going to a dance band drumming instructor and was given copies of music every week when I went that I concentrated more on it, and I was able to sight read anything I got.
Aye, aye.
And that helped me a lot. And then eventually, when I became the leading drummer of the police, I was able to cope with it and write it.
Aye.
As I made the drum score up,
Aye.
I was able to write it down.
Aye, aye.
So
It seems to be quite common nowadays for leading drummers to be able to do a lot of scores and this, that and next thing, you know. But I know that there was a lot of drummers in probably your day that didn't bother reading music. Just a lot, it was straight from
to
memory.
begin with, it was all memorised and just made up in your head. And
Aye.
it was hard work.
And the other
Memorise
drummers
it.
would be picking it up from that.
Yes,
Yep.
they just, around the practice table, they watched what you did
Aye.
and they copied you.
Yeah.
But in the long run, I think it was better to
Oh, aye.
master the reading.
The reading, of course.
Yes.
Aye. I just when as a thought occurred here, you know, we got to pipe music books written for solo piping, and there's pipe music written for bands, of course, and it's widespread. And we pick up books and we take tunes from books, but I always had the impression that leading drummers just ignored what was happening elsewhere and wrote their own stuff. Is that correct or what?
Well, there was a certain amount and that went on.
Aye.
Drummers were more enamoured with their own ability as technicians,
Aye.
as
But they
opposed
put
to
their own
listening
stamp
to...
on it rather than they copy other folks' work.
Oh
to a
yes,
certain
of
extent.
course, aye.
But was there, and you spoke about Duthert a second ago, a lot of folk loved his stuff, of course, and a lot of folk copied his stuff. So,
Oh, aye.
were they reading his music, or were they just listening to it and playing it, or what?
Well, I don't remember ever getting much of Alec's music myself.
But were you aware of
But
others?
I was aware of the sounds he was making, and I would obviously try and copy some of them, as everybody else did.
Yeah.
Because Alec was the king at that time. You know.
Yeah.
He was the best technician going
How
around.
different was your style from Alec? Maybe even before Alec came to the fore. He came to the fore pretty soon, actually. When I think, but. Did you change your style radically after Alec, or were you just continuing in your own way?
Well, to be honest, I was copying Willie Patterson, who was my instructor.
And Willie Patterson's quite a bit different from Alec Duther's style.
Yes.
Because I remember Willie Patterson, I really do, and I was involved with him in another wee band, and talking to him, and you could almost recognise the tune from his style of playing.
Yes, if you could play note for note of the pipe music, which was a criticism eventually.
Yes.
And Alec Duther got away for that.
Aye, he did.
Playing the dotted note and the cut note, the dotted note and the cut note in strathspeys, as opposed to Alec's style of, he rolled across lots of...
Aye.
And made a more even rhythm.
Aye, and it was more, I think Alec was, how would one say, more expressing accompaniment rather than slavishly following the pipe music.
Exactly.
Would that be...
that would be very fair to say that, Alan, yes.
Aye.
He definitely didn't follow the notes the way... Another man that did the same was Alec McCormick.
Aye.
Who was in the police and went to Australia. Now, Alec and Willie were great pals. And they had similar styles. But Alec, who eventually won the drum corps championships on several occasions, he had his own way and probably got somewhere in between Duther and Willie Patterson.
I see. See, when you look on it in latter years, I know you're no longer involved, but on the scene, I, as a piper, listening to drum corps at the back end of bands, and I've got a particular drum corps in mind, but I'm not going to name it because I don't want to upset folk. To me, they diverged so completely from the pipe music that it was like two different things going on, and I thought they completely lost the art of accompaniment, and they were just doing their own thing, and almost to the point of they were chasing drumming prizes rather than a band prize. Would that be a fair criticism?
I would agree with that, yes. I don't say every drum corps
but there was a tendency towards...
They're so good now.
Aye.
And there's so many of them. I listen on a Saturday night up now, off the radio.
Okay.
And I'm amazed at the technical ability of all the side drummers. And there's maybe 9, 10 up to...
That's another subject we'll maybe cover.
The only thing is, you don't have to go in and play hard yourself. It's all there for you. And another thing is, they've got rid of the idea of the leading drummer playing on his own in the piano part.
Yes.
Nowadays, the drum corps in every second bar,
Yeah, they're playing all the time.
And it works. It does work. So that's progress.
You're right, and it is progress.
Oh, yeah. I'm not saying everything they do is correct. As you say, some of them go on there and they want to show off their own prowess, and they're not caring a damn about what the pipers are doing. The ensemble effect,
And see, and latterly, I just got fed up with pipe bands a couple of years ago and walked away, but after 60 years, so. But latterly, I was just would get to the stage that I couldn't recognise the ensemble. And bands are so good nowadays, the pipe corps are so good, the drum corps are so good, that actually the ensemble judge is the one that holds sway over who's winning the prizes in the top 6 in the first grade. So you've really got to come back to playing as a band rather than 2 individual units in order to succeed in the prize win.
Well, as you know, Alan, in the old days there wasn't any ensemble judge.
Aye.
And it was only the powers that be, the McAllisters and the Duthers and them all, who eventually, through their own meetings, decided that we should have an ensemble judge.
Yes.
Someone who can decipher between a drum corps, a pipe corps, and a band sound.
Yeah.
And the band sound was winning. And of course, some of the more prominent ensemble judges were very kind to the police, especially when I was in it.
Well,
we won a lot of prizes.
You've actually just taken the question out. That was my next question of you. You and Ian must have sat down early doors and discussed how you were going to play together.
I don't know that there was a great deal of discussion. Ian was always somehow happy with me because I wasn't a forceful. Should I compare myself with John Kirkwood, who was a wee power fella that came after me? He had powerful hands.
Aye.
And it came through the drum corps, really powerful stuff. Whereas I think I was more sedate and quieter in the background. And I don't know whether that was the reason for success or not, but...
Ian Naughty complimented you. When I interviewed him, he said that the finest drum corps he had was under Alec Connell, and that's attributed a lot of the success to your corps at the back end of the band, knitting so comfortably in with what he was trying to achieve with the pipe music.
What I would say is, I don't know that when Ian and I got together, we worked well together.
Uh-huh.
We got on well together and sat and listened to tunes, and he would point out what he wanted brought out, if possible, or quieter or whatever. And it worked the way we did that. We didn't have a specific formula where, right, I've got to do that with that tune. I'll tell you one thing that just come to my mind. The type of tune we played, there was lots of bands came out and played marches, strathspeys and reels that really didn't suit a drum corps, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And the tunes that I liked, Balmoral Highlanders, Cameronian Rant, McAllister's Dirk, that was an instance of a strathspey that I liked to play to, you know. And there was lots of tunes like that, but there was lots of tunes. For instance, I'm not miscalling them, but Big Ronnie used to play a tune called Glenfinnan Highland Gathering.
That was a solo piping tune.
Exactly. Now that's what I'm getting at.
I remember I was in the band at that time when Ronnie was there, and he played that. He also played another difficult tune, Brigadier is Ronald Cheap of Terrorin.
Yeah.
And the third part of that was horrendous, you know, and everybody...
From a piper's point of view.
And the drummer, I thought, everybody got into a fankle with that, you know, and it never really took off at all. Whereas your Highland Weddings, Young McGregor, Hugh Kennedy and all that sort of stuff seemed to be composed always with a pipe band in mind, you know.
Yes, with a drum corps in mind.
Aye.
To play to.
Aye, just something that everybody could express.
Oh, I agree with you completely there about that. The wrong type of tune for a drum corps.
How did you go on with... I know that Ian introduced Inverary Castles as strathspey at one point. I don't think he played it for that long though. In the early 70s would that be?
Inverary Castle, you know, I can't remember that one too well.
You remember it, no?
Aye, well, I remember the tune now. You're humming it over, but I can't remember.
That was a difficult one for pipe bands as well. You know?
Aye. Is that the one with the cut notes at the end?
Aye.
Now that always intrigued me when I heard it. I said, now how the heck do you drum to that? You know?
Aye. As you say, some tunes are a lot easier to play to your Bog and Lochans and all the rest of it, you know, it's just bay-wise and...
Aye, Bog and Lochan, Athel Cummers.
Aye, Athel Cummer,
Aye, they're straight. Strong, weak, medium, weak, right the way through, and you couldn't go wrong very much.
Yeah.
Whereas, what about the Strathspey, the Piper's Bonnet?
Oh, that...
How would you fancy drumming to that?
Well,
Now,
I played it in solos, but I couldn't imagine a pipe band playing that.
Well, I remember Willie Patterson. I used to admire Willie, as you can imagine, when he was my instructor, and he went up and they got second to Alec Duffert in the solos, way back, long time ago. And he played the Piper's Bonnet.
Aye.
And Eddie McClellan was his piper. And
I remember Eddie fine. He taught me in the College of Piping.
Aye, a fine piper he was. I played with McRae when I was at. And Willie played this Piper's Bonnet, and I said, how the heck did he get his... And of course, we've finished a wee while ago talking about Willie following the notes of the pipe tune.
Yes.
Which is exactly what he did with it. But he managed to manufacture some drum movements that fitted it perfectly, you know.
It's amazing.
Although it might not be a modern score nowadays, you know.
Willie's style just seemed to die a death, especially when Duthart really came to the fore. How soon would you write in the Duthart? I can remember him way back even the late 60s, very strong drum corps with Shots and Dykehead.
Yes, aye, he had a wonderful drum corps there.
Your Strathspey, your Cameronian Rant and Pretty Marion and all that, that seemed to be his favourite tunes at that time.
Well, you can see where I was influenced as well, with just mentioning Cameronian Rant.
Yes, do you remember we were playing at Shots when you mentioned it, and it was halfway through September and it was almost snowing, it was torrential rain, and we sat in the bus the whole afternoon, and Angus MacDonald was pipe major, and Angus said, just tune up in the bus, and we tuned up individually, the drones sitting in the seats in the bus. Come off with the full capes on. I think I don't know if we played with the Glengarrys instead of feather bonnets, and we were last on, caped the pipes right, didn't blow them outside at all, walked right into the arena and took the pipes out from under the capes, put them out, and we won the thing because the pipes were bone dry and they were fine, you know, for the 5 minutes we were on. But that was really
that was being
crap.
Smart. That was being smart, of course. Aye.
But the Shots was a horrible place. I always hated playing there. It was too late in the year, wasn't it? It was
the second week in September.
Correct.
The week before Pitlochry.
Aye.
It was the second last competition we played in for the whole season.
Aye.
And I always remember one year, and I was playing away with the cape on and everything, and I was watching Jimmy Taylor, the drone coming up the side of his face, and the water was running right down his face and right down his neck, and I said, well, that must feel dreadful.
Aye.
Poor Jimmy.
Aye.
Oh, we got through it. I think we got a prize. I'm not sure whether we won it that year or not, but I would imagine that was the year you're talking about, with the heavy rain.
Aye, it just went on, and but that was the only way you're going to... Everybody else had been practising outside in the heavy rain and trying to tune drones and set chanters, and Angus MacDonald just says, well, we're going to lose 10% of the sound anyway, you know, never be a perfect match, but at least we're pretty near the mark with being the band practice the day before and all this. And he accepted the slight loss of sound as the benefit of going on with dry instruments and all the rest of it, you know.
Do you remember the judging way back? Cowell's the last thing I remember when Angus McClellan, Angus playing on the wrong side, his pipes disintegrated during the first of the 2-3 pace rolls. And he just bundled everything up and he walked away. And nothing was done about it because the judges were in a wee canvas box.
Aye, I remember that.
So they never found out. And I think that's one of the good reasons they brought the judges out in the open.
Aye, they brought them out in the open. But the judges were like poking holes with pencils.
It was easy. They weren't entirely... But it's possible they missed that situation.
Aye, I'm quite sure.
Because Angus just... I mean, the whole of the pipes, the drones all just disintegrated, and he rolled them all up in his arms and walked off.
Aye.
And who's to say, unless the judge was watching it.
Aye, and one of the officials, nobody's made comment, obviously.
No, there was no comment made in the sheets or anything.
Aye. But see that in these days, going back to, your 50s and 60s, you had 25 marks for the drumming, and you had, I think it was...
That was 100 marks, but it was divided before to get the total to add to the band total. Yeah.
They had 60 points for the piping, and another 10 points for it was attack and breaks.
Aye.
I think if you get a good attack and your
can't
breaks
remember
and good finish,
bring from
points,
one tempo to the
all that sort of stuff.
Aye.
And then they did away with all that, of course, and they just had separate drumming judges, and they awarded the same amount of points, and then all of a sudden the medley came out, and that was the late 60s, 68 I think it was.
Yeah.
68.
That's progress, Alan.
Aye.
There's no doubt about it. We made a lot of progress over the years from where we used to play just a March of Spain. Really.
Aye, 3 March of Spain rules we had to submit, and then went down to 2 in the medley, and then it became 2 medleys, I think, and the 2 March MSRs. But it was progress. There's bits and pieces got lost too,
I'll tell you what, I've just thought in something that really bugged me, more so when I left the band and was just listening into radio programmes, was the amount of use the tenor was put to the tenor drum.
Right.
And that they were coming in and off beats and cross rhythms and stuff. And it got to the stage where the tenor section, of course, there was more of them.
Aye.
There used to be just 2 in the band.
Aye.
Adam and Lucky.
That's
and,
right.
Now they've got 4 and 5.
We've got 6.
And 3 on either side. And I've even seen one with 2 bass drums. But the sound that they make now is much quieter. So I think there's been a lot of criticism about this overpowering bump,
Too
bump.
predominant. Aye.
Because I remember in a recording complaining about Adam. I'm assuming it was Adam or Lackey. We're making a recording down at Leith. And the sound was coming through far too heavy.
I remember that Leith thing.
Remember we used to have the bass drum on one end of the stage and the pipers on the other end and the snare drummers away in this corner here. It was horrendous. We weren't used to it, of course.
No,
now it's...
and the technical ability to record pipe bands at that time was very poor as well. They weren't used to recording very loud bands. They were used to recording guys with a guitar and a snare drum or something,
Nowadays you don't hear the bands being recorded in a studio. They're either in the concert hall in Glasgow or else it's a recording of the actual competition.
How do you stop this predominance of the percussion section at the back being overpowering in the likes of the concert hall in Glasgow? I think there's been various things like deflectors and all the rest to use between the pipers and the drums, but it never seems to work.
Technology, you mean?
No, let's Ward, the leading drummer, he always wanted his full drum corps on. He wouldn't countings going on with 5 sides, just to sort of downplay it a wee bit, And this was, but he wasn't the only one. It was just about every drum corps that did the concerts insisted on their full drum corps. And if you're sitting at certain parts of the hall, it was okay, but other parts it was very bad. Because again,
I suppose I can understand that. Different places you're at in the hall.
You alluded
Acoustics.
to numbers there a wee minute ago. What's your opinion? I mean, you had in your day, I don't know if you'd any more than 4, maybe you had 5 at one point.
5 at one time.
And then 2 tenors and a bass. And now I've counted 10, 11 snares, 5 or 6 tenors and a bass. And sometimes the drum corps bigger than the pipe corps. And I'm not joking.
I was just going to say that, but generally speaking, the pipers have increased in numbers as well.
Aye.
But as you say...
But if you get caught out on a bad day, for instance, and you're down to 16, 17, 18, there's much... So, what's your opinion about a large drum corps?
Oh, I like them. I like them because you can relax more.
And
We used to go in with between 3 and 5 snare drummers. You felt you had to play it, and I was never a heavy player.
Mm-hmm.
I was always I like to think of myself as an accompanist rather than a driver, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've got 6, 7, 8 snare drummers, you can go in there nice and relaxed. And if you've scored the thing properly, you don't take all the weight yourself in the piano part.
Uh-huh.
It's distributed among the whole corps, and it becomes a relaxed performance as opposed to trying to pressure it. You know,
Okay, so it's
trying
a
to-
volume thing that you're trying to produce
Initially,
volume
it's
with a small core, and you don't need to do that because the larger core's producing the volume and what.
Now you're talking about, just come to mind about the tone of the drum that's helps in one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Either with a depth of a tone. In the old days when we had the calfskin, there was a depth of the drum
Uh-huh.
that came through the pipe band, whereas the modern skins that they put on the snare drums, they were tightened so
Aye.
much that it was like playing on a hardboard table,
Aye.
as opposed to getting a sort of resonance coming through. And that's what I always missed. After I left, I was always a severe critic of this hardboard sound
Aye.
that they produced. And the fewer drummers you have, the less volume you're going to have collectively,
Yeah.
you know.
Did the Pearl and the other, who's the other maker? Your 2 main makers of drums. Did
Premier.
Premier. Did they differ in the tone of the instruments, the drums?
What they did do, it seemed to me, is they put more rods in them, and the pressure on the drum head was more even when you were tightening it.
Yeah.
Whereas if you only had 8 screws,
Uh-huh.
then there was bits getting pulled down,
Aye.
different pressure than others, you know.
Uh-huh. So it wasn't an even pressure throughout the head.
But generally speaking, that happened with all marching drums.
Mm-hmm.
There was more rods put in.
Aye.
For instance, the one I was talking about there in that picture I brought back from Australia when I was out there, the drum manufacturer there, and he gave the police, donated a full set of snare drums,
Uh-huh.
4 or 5 I think, and they had more rods in them, and he was the one, as far as I was concerned, that invented the Kevlar skin,
Mm-hmm.
the stuff they made the bulletproof waistcoats out of. He made drum heads out of that, and I thought they were great. It was like a fabric rather than a vellum.
Plastic.
A plastic.
Aye.
And the sound was tremendous.
Uh-huh. And
And
did
I
they
th-
move away from that?
I believe they're still using it.
They're still
to
using
a certain extent, but they've got other ones that are every bit as good now.
Ah. So they're constantly developing the pipe
aye.
band drum.
Technology, Alan.
Yeah.
Progress.
So you're the fan of the big core then, eh?
Well, I like the not a huge
I
core.
thought they took up too many seats in the bus, Alec.
Well, that was one thing in our day. We were always outnumbered in the bus.
You always sat in the back seat.
Aye.
The back seat was enough for you. Eh?
Aye, them were the days.
Aye. So, Steve again was asking what were the musical differences and demands he experienced between the various pipe majors you served with. I don't know if that'd be a difficult question.
It's a difficult one. I got on well with all my pipe majors. I think mainly because I had it in my mind, you're the boss and I'm your workling, you know, I'm the fella at the back that tries to help you produce a sound, as opposed to I've got my drum corps here and I'm doing what I want to do. A lot of them did that too, didn't they? But Ronnie I got on good with. Ian, of course. Angus MacDonald. Angus could be a wee bit snootish at times, you know.
But he was like that with everybody in the band, didn't he?
No, he
didn't have any favourites, just treated everybody the same way.
It's really not a criticism, it's an observation, you know.
But I'll tell you something, I mean, you could say a lot of stuff about Angus, but what I would say about him, he had a prize-winning band.
Oh, aye.
And he knew how to build a band.
He rebuilt the band.
Aye.
Because look at what we had when we started in the early 60s.
No, I joined in 66, you weren't out the first prize. The only thing he didn't win was the Worlds.
That's right.
And he got beat 10 to a point in 66.
Is that Inverness? Inverness.
Aye.
Yeah, you're right there. In
That's
fact,
because the bus broke down the day before, of course. Remember that? Could you remember the story? Instead of me reciting it, we got to Loch Lomond and the bus broke down. Crane Lara.
No, it's funny, it doesn't stick in my mind that particular bit. What I do remember is he had a lot of guest people travelling on the bus.
That's right.
And that sort of irked me a wee bit. I thought we should be concentrating fully on the World Championship as opposed to having, not that they weren't nice people, you know, but the bus was crammed full of guests, if you like, you know, as opposed to, and you couldn't swear. No, but as I say, well, that was the three pipe majors, Angus MacDonald, Ronnie and Ian. That was the only three that I played under.
When did you retire?
1988.
88. And were you the leading drummer right up to that point?
No. I handed over to John Kirkwood. I think it was about a year before. Because John Kirkwood played leading drum the year we won, and which had completed the 6 in a row.
Okay.
I was just a double 40 drummer at that time on that last one. But up until then, and then of course John carried on after I left in 88.
Is there any particular reason for the change?
Well, John was there, and he was a younger man, and his hands, well, let's face it, I was beginning to crumble a wee bit, Alan, you know.
As one does.
As you know, as one does when you get a certain age. I'll remember the very day that it happened, that I'd made up my mind I wanted to stand down, was, where was it now? Livingston's band. The Canadians, they were tipped to win that day.
Yep.
And we beat them. And some say we shouldn't have beat them, but we did.
Livingston, when I interviewed him, he was quite sensitive about the whole thing.
But no, that was it. I went on, and I remember Roddy, he was standing next to me, and I made a wee fumble, and it was a complete new set I had written. And technically, I suppose I hadn't mastered it properly, but I made a wee fumble. And Roddy, I could hear him saying, come on, get a grip, you know. And of course, I picked up a wee bit and we went on. But when I came off, I said to Ian, Ian, I think my time has come to pack it in. And we had John appearing at the time. And
But it made good sense for him to feed in while you were still there anyway.
Of course.
A very, very good handover, if
Oh,
you
aye,
like.
they were still using some of my scores.
Aye, well, it's a gradual handover rather
Until
than a
John,
sudden thing. Aye.
That's right, until John got his own act together and started writing his own stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, after I left and I listened to him playing, when they won the following year as well, 88 or 89 it was, or 89 or 90 they won again, and they played the Cameroonian rant, and John was a great lover of the single beats, you know.
Aye.
You know, and he had plenty of that, and in fact...
Hiya, how you doing?
Fine.
Wee Joe complained about the amount of single strokes.
Aye.
He was... you're on the recording!
Sorry, it's just part of the background.
Aye, and wee Joe complained to me once. He said, he's a smashing drummer, I like, but he plays an awful lot of single strokes, you know. And
Aye.
he did. John
Aye.
was single stroke daft, you know.
Aye.
But you see, I knew his father was a drummer in the Shots years and years ago. His father immigrated to Canada
Uh-huh.
with his whole drum corps,
Mm-hmm.
and they were a smashing drum corps
Right.
before Alec Daffert came to the
Yeah.
band, you know. And of course, John, single strokes, you know.
Aye.
Not that single strokes, it's a great technical ability to have. As we
Did
know
the
it.
war take over from Kirkwood or what happened?
I think Roddy Darragh had a wee spell.
Aye, right, okay.
Now, John didn't play very long after I left. He
Uh-huh.
played up until about, 91, 92.
Okay.
Played 3-4 years. And then I think it was Roddy.
Mm-hmm.
And then who else came in after that? Might have been Eric. I remember going to practice out in Lochrange a couple of times, and Eric was there. So he couldn't have been very far behind.
Mm-hmm. So, see that the band travelled extensively, and you must have been in quite a few countries with them.
Oh, yes.
And probably in my time, I remember we were in Italy, and we did Salerno. What was it? Twice.
Amalfi.
And the Aqua Terme up in the north
That's
was
right.
the third year.
When we were going along in the bus and the aircraft was flying down below us.
Aye!
Out the side of the mountain. That was amazing, wasn't it?
Aye, I was in an awful mess that day because I'd had a bad brandy the night before. Jimmy Taylor and
I
I.
seem to remember that. I remember Jimmy having the spaghetti dinner,
Aye.
and all doing his tunic and everything was all spattered with spaghetti
Funny.
sauce.
It's always these daft things you remember, isn't it? But these were good trips, and it was
Oh,
nice
marvellous.
and warm. It was September. It was a music festival, and we went up to Graveyard where all the Allied soldiers had
Salerno.
been buried. Salerno, yeah. And Big Ronnie played the
That's
ground,
right,
the floors of the Lament for the Children.
Yeah.
He played the ground in first variation, and I know that the Americans from the US 6th Fleet Marching Band were there.
Yep.
And
remember
they
it
were
well.
on tears because Big Ronnie was playing this lament and all the rest of it. No, it was quite moving actually.
It was.
And Angus Laurie, he had to retire away to the bus because he was overcome with it. And wee things like that you remember.
I was amazed at the solemnity of
Aye.
the place and the vast amount of graves that there were.
Immaculate too, you
Oh
know.
yeah, beautifully kept.
Aye.
No matter where you went.
Yeah.
I've been to Amsterdam as well and places like that in the continent where the
Yeah.
graves, and you're amazed and you look at the headstones
Aye.
and the guys are 18, 19
Yeah.
pilots, 19-year-olds.
Oh, terrible. Aye.
Aye.
A waste of young lives, you know.
Also, probably before you come into the band, Alan, we were in Scandinavia quite a bit.
Aye,
Denmark.
I remember that. Aye.
We've had 2 or 3
Quite an
trips.
affinity with Denmark.
Oh
didn't
yes,
you?
because their band came over
Aye.
and we had some marvellous togetherness
Aye.
concerts.
Aye.
And then we had a lovely time in Sweden in 1966, I think it was, where it was instigated by Mr. Fraser, who owned the stores in Glasgow, and he was friendly with his counterpart in Stockholm, Mr. Goleen. And of course we all come home with presents of vases and different accoutrements, you know, there's still some ashtrays and anything like that, and we were all given these presents to bring home.
It's amazing, eh?
Aye. Wonderful trips.
Great trips. I thoroughly enjoyed the Italian thing, and you know, that's first civilian flights for me at that time because I was very young.
Did you go to the World Cup in '74?
No, but I heard about it.
Oh,
Tell us about that.
That was a wonderful trip. We
Tell
got taken over, and if you remember the opening ceremony, it was about 16, or was it 8 or 16 big footballs in the middle of the field, and we were, each performing country were represented by the personnel inside this ball. And at the given time, the ball opened up and the band began to play. We opened up with a wee 16 bar drum salute, and then the pipes had time to spread themselves and get their pipes up, and then we played. It was a marvellous scene. I remember watching it.
What like was it inside this giant football?
Oh, it was a bit claustrophobic, you know. You felt there wasn't much breathing space. But of course...
Did you spend a lot of time in it?
Aye, fair amount of time, because...
Waiting in the opening ceremony.
Waiting in the ceremony taking place. And if you weren't number one to open, then you were waiting for... Could have been 16 times, you know. But it was a wonderful experience. And we had the Brazilians and the Italians staying in the same hotel as us. And we had impromptu wee parties where we performed.
Wee cups of tea and stuff like that.
John a wee cup of tea. John Wilson played the pipes, and the rest of them all seemed to enjoy it very much, you know. And it really was. The tragic thing was Scotland did so well, and yet...
They never lost a game.
Ormond
was the manager.
That's him, Willie Ormond. And we had all the greats there. Dennis Law was just coming to the end of his career. And the team played well. We were at 2 matches, and then we came away before the Brazilian game. We went home to watch it on TV.
That'd be a good experience. Did you go to Malaysia with the band?
No.
Did you go to Russia?
No.
No.
I
know the band in these 2 places. Where else did you?
I've been to Russia, but pardon?
Did you go to the States with the band at all? United States?
No. We went to Canada. We went to Vancouver.
How did that go?
That was a wonderful trip.
What was the occasion?
It was some kind of festival, 80. It was the year I retired, I think, 1988.
Was that the Intercontinental Championship or something?
No, that was in Toronto.
Ah.
We won that in 77, I think. And, but this was the last trip I was away with the band, was Vancouver. And it was one of these, like, something 86, was it? Some kind of festival, 86. It used to come up on the screen. 1986, and that was the last trip I was on. But it was very good. We were very well looked after, and had a few wee parties. And
Steve has asked a question that you and I know very well, and probably most folk in Scotland know. He's out in California, and maybe there's other folk don't recognise that. As far as your time in the police was concerned, you were on a steady day shift, and what did you do when you weren't playing with the band or practising with the band?
Well, the happiest 5 years of my life in the police was the last 5 years, because I was in plain clothes in the middle of the centre of the city.
Uh-huh.
And I can think of 3 guys who, after being with me, were all promoted. And I wasn't, you know, but that's beside the point. I'm trying to remember their names. And Wally Cortondale and Neil Strickland, they were the plainclothes men. I was with 3 different guys. Who were they? Oh, gee.
So you were doing plainclothes work?
Plain work, just mainly shoplifters.
Uh-huh.
We got involved in the drugs.
Uh-huh.
This gentleman that you were talking
John
about,
Wilson.
John Wilson.
Aye.
We actually went to see him a couple of times. Barry was the first one that was out with me.
Okay.
And
Barry Donaldson.
Barry Donaldson. Barry couldn't run. I was the one that had to do the running, and I was the oldest. We got the guy coming out of C&A loaded with stuff. And of course he clocked us right away. We gave him the wee shimmy and he knew, and he started running. And he threw all the loot into a shop doorway, and Barry says, "I'll get that, you get him, Ali." I had to run. And I'm running after this guy.
Aye.
And I was in my 50s at this time. And I said, I'm struggling to catch this bloke. All of a sudden, a CID car came flashing by. And the driver was smoking a fag at the time. And he stopped the car and got out and ran past me like I was standing still and caught the guy in one hand. There was another guy, Wilson Brown. Another guy, remember Wilson?
Aye.
And we
Wilson,
chased a
then
guy.
Duff band manager and inspector in the band and all this sort
That's
of
right.
stuff. Aye.
C&A again,
Aye.
down in Argyle Street, Trungate. And this guy, he looked round and he twigged that we'd clocked him, lifting out right out the shop window. We were standing across the street watching him lifting one of these heavy snowsuit things.
Aye.
And he put it on. And he's coming out and he saw us standing watching, and we gave the wee, as Wilson used to say to me, the Alec Connell shimmy. You shimmied a wee bit and that set him off and he ran. Do you know where we got him? Outside a pub in Bridgeton where I used to work. And again, it was a crowd of the boys that saw me chasing this guy. But this time I was, you can imagine, for the C&A, right out to near enough bridge across to Beggar Street. And he came out, and these two got their name on the sheet as well for catching this guy.
Did you smoke at that time?
Yes, I think I did.
And most folk did, I think.
I did smoke at one time, but
I just wondered how you got on with the running and smoking.
Of course, I ran the marathon when I was 50.
Ah, well,
You know,
fairly fit then.
I think I'd stopped smoking by that time, actually. And I remember John Wilson and wee Harry, they used to smoke the odd wee cheroot cigar thing. And I think I had a go at that for a wee while, but generally speaking, I'd stopped smoking, you know.
Yeah, that's good.
But,
and of course, you had the golf as well. You're a big golfer, aren't you?
oh, aye.
Right up to recently, I mean.
Aye, I was, Molly and I both got into the golf, and we've both been captains up at Crowwood Golf Club.
Uh-huh.
And
What's your handicap?
my lowest handicap was 5, but I think around about 7 or 8 was probably my best.
So you must have been playing quite a lot then, yeah?
Oh, aye.
Mm-hmm.
3 times a week.
I remember even way back in my time, talking 60s, and you spoke about it earlier, you were very interested in dance bands. I remember you going away for competitions to go and play with a dance band that night and all that sort of stuff. You did a lot of that, didn't you?
Yes, I
Who
did.
did you play with?
Oh, several people.
Right.
In fact, most of them are dead now. I finished up, after I finished with the dance band, the actual swing band, you know, the keyboard player, the drummer and the bass player, I finished with that. And
What was the style of music?
Well, modern swing music.
Was it just for dance music?
Aye, dance music.
And the clubs or what?
Aye. East Kilbride, the Bruce Hotel in East Kilbride. that was one of them.
Mhm.
Stuart Hotel. Played at golf clubs too. Kirkhill Golf Club. Played a long spell in there. But as I say, the band leaders then started using artificial drum sounds. And
Right.
therefore I was sort of made redundant. And I went and started playing with Lex Keith, who was the accordion.
I remember Lex fine.
You remember him,
Aye,
too?
in the Highlanders Institute, and he was a smashing accordionist.
I know.
Great accordionist.
Well, I played with Lex for a good few years, and another fella from Stirling was the fiddle player in the band, was Bob Christie. He died as well. Lex is dead. I was at his funeral. You remember an accordion player in the police? I think he finished Inspector Big Charlie.
Aye, Charlie, what's his name?
We used to get him
I
at the
remember.
tattoo in the Kiln Hall.
Aye.
He played the wee Highland dance band.
Patrick, was it?
Charlie Kilpatrick, that was him.
Kilpatrick.
Yes,
Aye.
Charlie.
Aye,
And
he's-
they were all at the Lex's funeral.
There you are, eh? But did you enjoy playing the wee dance band? How much different? Explain to the folk that watching the difference between the pipe band drumming and what you were doing with the
Well,
wee.
enjoyment was much better. You were just sitting and you could play what you wanted. I didn't have to follow a score.
Aye. And how many drums did you have in the kit?
Oh, the full kit's still out in the garage there.
Aye. So how many drums is that?
2 tom-toms, a bass drum, a snare drum, and of course umpteen stands with all the cymbals, you know, and the hi-hats and everything.
Did
It was a full kit.
somebody teach you to do that?
Well, I went to Lester Penman, as Alec Duthert did as well, many, many years ago. You can imagine how long ago that was.
Lester Penman.
He used to have a studio in Cumberland Street. He was a big band drummer himself, and he started a school, and of course every Sunday the place was cluttered with blokes. And as Big Alec used to say to me, he says, Alec, it's no what he teaches you. He doesn't teach you a great deal. He'll teach you how to read better. But he says, all the people round about are all getting a shot in the kit before you pick up all sorts of things.
Aye.
Just
watching,
listening
observing.
and watching.
Aye.
Well, Lester was good.
You obviously enjoyed it because you kept that going for a long number of years, didn't you?
Aye. Well, I remember going to call one year and going to Ian McClellan and saying, I'm going away early, is that okay? That was just about when John Kirkwood was taking over. And John was there, I think. And I went away early and got the bus, the boat and the train back and was away out in East Kilbride playing that night and getting home at 1 and 2 in the morning.
Jeez, aye.
Well, I put myself through it, Alan.
Aye. And you'd be a quick change for a pipe band uniform into
that was
civvies.
another thing, eh?
Aye.
But it was enjoyable. It was enjoyable.
John Wally was one of the drummers earlier on in the band. Did he give up the drumming through retiro in the band?
I don't know whether John was he obviously never got on well with Angus MacDonald.
It was a bit different. I thought from my young perspective, because I was only 22 and a half when I joined, and from my young perspective, he was one of the older guys, and I don't think he'd really got on that well with. He had a different personality. There wasn't really a pipe band sort of personality type, I thought,
It's funny you should say that.
He was into more the dance band as well, was it? No, he did a lot of gigs with.
Oh yes. Yes, he did. He was he played with Willie Patterson in the Rutherglen pipe band.
Did he?
Yes, he did. And after that, of course, he joined the police. And he took over after Alec McCormick left to go to Australia.
Aye.
And he was there, along with Bill Hamilton, Bobby Brown, Jimmy McGeechy, and was another one. They were all in the police band. In fact, we had a kerfuffle one Sunday, Armistice Day, George Square. You've done that yourself.
Yo.
How many times?
Aye.
And John Wally said to me, he says, where's your drum? I says, Bill's got it. we didn't have enough drums.
Aye.
So John went up to Bill Hamilton and said, he's playing that drum,
Aye.
you're not, sort of thing.
Aye.
And of course it caused,
All sorts of.
eventually, when he became a superintendent, and he was the boss, one of the bosses at Stewart Street,
Aye.
and I'm meeting him in the street, and I could see him seething under and saying, I'll get you now, you brat, you know. So he didn't, and of course Adam wasn't happy about it either. I always got on well with Lackey.
Aye. Well, Lackey was a kind of dourish guy, but he was straight as a die, really. I worked with him in the Marine,
He
funnily
was a
enough.
great Masonic man too.
Aye, him and Jimmy McGeechy
That's
were in
right.
the Marine.
And Murdo.
But I remember Big Doogie was the bass drummer, Doogie Cleland,
That's
and he won sort of bass prizes at Cowl and all that sort of stuff. And everything was fine, but he was always going off sick with a cold and this, that, and the next thing. And the Mr. Police tattoo just dropped us right in it. Oh, it was about 67 or something like that. 68.
I don't remember that.
That's when McGeechy took over the bass.
Jimmy was good.
Jimmy was terrific.
But
He was a timpani drummer earlier in his
Aye,
time.
he was an orchestral
Aye.
drummer. He played in theatre
Aye.
orchestras.
Aye.
Oh, Jimmy was...
Oh, Jimmy was some bass
And of
drummer.
course he was
And the Pipers are saying, because bass drummers weren't something that Pipers weren't interested in, you know, but this guy just, the way he touched the drum and everything else, oh. And I remember that tattoo. It was quite a wee star at that time, and he got his opportunity, by God, he'd seized it,
Oh,
and
aye.
he never looked back after that, you know.
Aye, because Jimmy was a wee bit upset at getting dropped for the drum corps. You had to do it, Alan, at those times.
Aye. These things happen as well, you know, times before.
Bobby Brown saw the light right away, and he off, and I think he finished inspector or chief inspector somewhere.
Aye.
And I always got on well with Bobby, and he never fell out with me over anything, you know.
Aye.
Bill Hamilton did.
Uh-huh.
When he was a sergeant at the East, he gave me a bad time one day because I was a few minutes late coming in, you know. Who do you think you are, you know? Because I said, well, you ought to know you're in the band as well. But no, I don't hold any bad feeling against
See,
Bill
Alan
Hamilton.
McGeechy,
Young Alan, Jimmy's son.
Is that the son or the nephew?
Son.
Son.
Aye.
And he became bass drummer.
Now, I'm just thinking where Jimmy McGeechy finished up. He finished up in the nursing home.
Yes.
Up in Bearsden
Yeah.
direction.
Uh-huh.
And he had a nephew who became a sergeant in the pipe band.
Aye.
He
That's
was a
Alan.
bass drummer. That's who you're talking about.
That's who I'm
Aye.
talking about.
Aye, he was a nephew, but Jimmy had a son.
Aye, right, okay.
They had nothing to do with pipe bands.
Aye, but Alan McGeechy was a very good bass drummer
Oh yes,
as well.
excellent.
Very good bass drummer.
More so after I left, but...
Do you know he's playing pipes now with the Mulgai pipe band?
Oh yeah. I don't believe it. That's amazing.
That is.
Amazing.
Aye.
A clever lad too.
Aye,
He was
clever.
obviously getting on the job.
A nice chap too. I always got on well with a wee bit crabbit like the rest is, you know, but we all get like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I know Alan, nice chap, like, very, very good with me. I was asked to go back to the band in the late 90s just to help out tuning and this, that, and that thing. And,
I remember you when you were doing the
I
drums.
doing the drones for a long number of years, but and Alan's very, very good. So that's it, the drumming. So I think we've just about covered everything, Alec. We've been right
Very
around
enjoyable,
the
Alan.
houses.
I hope you can
and-
make something.
No,
out
I'm
of
quite
my
sure
garbled-
everybody will enjoy it, and thanks very much for your time.
No trouble at all.
All the best to you.
Thanks.